Welcome back to Empowerment Radio. Well, today it's about empowering ourselves to either change, get out of, and not return into abusive relationships. Carolyn is writing, my boyfriend teases me a lot. He says things like, "Oh, you're so lucky to be with me. I could be with anyone." Or, "Oh, I know everyone loves you, just not me." I feel awful afterwards. Is this a form of abuse? Well, the question is, have you told your boyfriend that you feel awful? And if so, and this behavior continues, even though you say it hurts you, maybe you have even cried, I don't know, then it is certainly some form of abuse, because even though he knows that he causes you pain, he continues to do it. That means that whatever he's trying to accomplish with this teasing is more important to him than your feelings. And that is a form of abuse. And why is he teasing you? Well, teasing is something that we do to keep a certain kind of distance. And a certain kind of distance keeps you also in a greater place of control. In these relationships, often one person feels more into the relationship than the other. And so the other person, it's almost like sitting on a high horse, is throwing out these sarcastic remarks just to make clear that, well, I don't need you. I am not that into you. And that form of control feels, of course, for the person who is controlled, horrible, but it makes also the other person who is in control feel more secure and safe. Because the truth is, the abusers are not powerful and they are not confident. And most of the times they don't feel really lovable. Abusers, and some people call a form of abuse energy vampirism, that is to take the power of the people that you're with. It's almost like, when you think about what the abuser is accomplishing. The abuser is accomplishing to imprison the person they are with, to make sure that this person feels so small, so insecure, that he or she never dares to leave. And the abuser needs that because deep inside they do believe that they will be left, or that they are really not valuable or good enough to keep a relationship going. So they are going into the abuse out of insecurity and out of that sense of powerlessness. Now, we cannot generalize, but this is certainly one of the most common tendencies. So if you see the boyfriend teasing you, also understand that there is a fear of losing you. And there is maybe a fear of letting you get too close and letting you maybe become even more important than you already are. Because if you really leave, then it would just be too devastating for him. So he needs to make a joke, and he needs to bring some kind of a sarcasm as a wall between your heart and his heart. Now, as the people that get abused or go into those abusive relationships, why do we do it? What is it what we are searching for? And why do we stay in those abusive relationships? Now, these are big questions, and this could be like 2 or 3 programs in itself, but let's just get a brief overview just to get you thinking. So I believe that abusers can be very charming. That's what I certainly have experienced myself. And the person that is abused often is also a person who is quite sensitive. And that person can be affected by the light, the fun, and the ability to make you feel special, and also, unfortunately, gets really affected by the negativity, by the criticism, and the judgment. Now, when you know about the cycle of violence, you know that it starts with that first honeymoon period. Everything is great, and butterflies and unicorns and roses and chocolates. And then somehow there is a little bit of frustration, irritation. There is a sense of, okay, I don't want to walk on eggshells. He has a bad day. And then there is the explosion, the abuse. And then there is the remorse. And please, forgive me. I just had problems at work. Give me another chance. And then he's trying really hard and he gives you flowers again and chocolate. And again, you feel great chemistry until there is a next irritation or the next passive aggressive behavior. The eggshell walking starts again until the explosion continues. So this cycle is something that I think a lot of people in different ways are experiencing. And the confusing part about the cycle is that when it's good, it's really good. And you're telling yourself, no one can make me feel better. No one gets me as much as that person. And so all this, what this person causes you in regards to pain and maybe even self-rejection, gets pushed aside for that good feeling that becomes more and more rare in abusive relationships. Now, sometimes we are picking abusive relationships that remind us of the person that we were abused by first. So this could be, for example, a parent. Now, if you had a father, for example, who was very neglectful or aggressive or demeaning, chances are that you are picking someone who has a similar behavior, not because you want to, but because your subconscious is familiar with that pattern and on some level may believe, well, this is what relationships are about and this is what you really deserve. And on the other hand, it may be that your subconscious says, well, there is still something that you haven't received. Of course, we always love to get love from our parents, approval, a sense of being important, that we matter. And if we haven't received that, we are looking for the similar archetypes, the similar personalities in our relationships in the subconscious hope to finally get that, what our parents were not able to give us. It's almost like, that one piece in the puzzle is missing, so we're looking to get it from someone else. Now, of course, usually it doesn't work because that person who has a similar personality, the abusive parent, will probably do exactly the same, abuse us again. And so after 2 or 3 go-arounds, we may understand that in order to heal that void and that wound that the parent left, we actually have to do the healing ourselves. We cannot let someone else do that for us. It doesn't work. Now, then there is also this other reason of looking for an abuser and staying with the abuser, that we are maybe starting out already with a sense of low self-esteem. Maybe we haven't been in a relationship for a long time. Maybe there is just a sense of, I will never find someone. And then you find someone, and that person may be exactly what you were looking for and makes you feel really good. And as you're going through this abuse, you're feeling more and more connected and attached. And you're feeling like, wow, this feels so good. And in the abuse, as the isolation happens, as you are becoming more and more through his possessive behavior focused on him and lose touch with the rest of your world, that person becomes your world. And it's harder and harder for you to get out of that. And that is another reason why we do stay in those relationships, because we don't really see a way out. The way out would be going back to the loneliness, would go back to the hopelessness, would go back to that feeling of not being lovable. So we rather stay with that complicated relationship that is also almost like a project, keeps us really busy and occupied, than going back into just being there with ourselves. And I heard many times clients tell me, I really don't like myself. And so I rather going to be with someone else I can focus on than having to be with myself, which is one of the, I think, biggest lessons for us to learn. Now, the other reason why we are staying in those relationships is that desire to rescue the person that we love and care about, that we see, as I mentioned before, that goodness inside, that we are just wanted to help this person to unleash. We are feeling like that we are the one. And maybe even the abuser tells you, you are the only one who can help me. You are the only one who can save me. And we feel flattered. We feel somewhere empowered. And we feel somehow, well, okay, this is my job. Now, I do believe in the healing power of love, but keep in mind that you cannot help somebody to become whole by letting them destroy you. When we come back, we will talk more about what can you do to change something inside of yourself, to get out of relationships that are abusive, and to not really get back into them as well. Stay tuned. Welcome back. We are talking about abusive relationships. What are the signs? Why are we getting in them? And now, how can we get out of them? Or how can we make sure to no longer search for those relationships? Now, I mentioned before the break that often there is something inside of us, a subconscious pattern that is looking for some kind of a completion of maybe an abusive relationship from our childhood. Now, this can also be the case of abusive relationships in your adulthood, where you go through several of them and you want to somehow prove yourself that this next person who is maybe a charmer or a macho or someone who is a man's man but can also be quite aggressive, that person will finally commit or finally treat you the way that you want because all the others weren't capable of. And so you go back and you may tell yourself it's more interesting or it's more fun. But again, all of those things, and this is the first step to get out and not go back in, is awareness. Be honest with yourself. Be honest and maybe even reach out and ask others for their opinion. Now, even though you may have been abused, that doesn't mean that your feelings go away. That doesn't mean that you become all of a sudden numb and whatever abuse happens to you, it doesn't matter anymore. You feel it. You feel disrespect. You feel being put down. You feel that lack of self-worth. You feel that you're somehow at the mercy of someone. You feel the anxiety. You feel that sense of always having to wait for the other shoe to drop or for a bomb to go off. So all of this is there. And if you feel like this in the relationship, you know something is seriously wrong. And maybe you haven't talked to your friends, your siblings, your parents, but it's time. Reach out and describe what's going on. Let someone see what happens and give you maybe their reflection on it. And then also notice how you may have been in denial. Be honest in that regard too. This is not your fault. This is nothing to blame yourself. This is not the moment where you tell yourself, oh, how could I be so stupid? This is simply the moment where you wake up and say, this is not okay. This is actually not acceptable. It should have never been acceptable. I was maybe pulled into it. Maybe I was made believe that it's going to change. Maybe I was simply blind. Blind because I didn't want to see it. Blind because I had hope. Blind because I had needs that I thought maybe one day will get met. But that clarity and that honesty ultimately will set you free. Because in that moment where you know what is acceptable and what is not, what you deserve and what you don't, in that moment where you say, I'm going to put my own needs first. I don't worry about pleasing or protecting the abuser. I don't worry about even whether the person leaves me or not. I will only focus on myself. In that moment when you make that decision, you have a large chunk of your power back. And that is a moment where you can also be more clear about your boundaries. Boundaries may be completely gone when you have been in an abusive relationship for a while. You may have just accepted rudeness, being yelled at. You may have just accepted that there is not even a physical space boundary. But when you are realizing what you deserve and what you don't, you will actually have a greater sense of the power of saying no, the power of pushing back, the power of saying, this is either going to change or I will be out of here. And these boundaries are not only external boundaries. They're not only about pushing back. They're not only about telling your partner that you have needs and you have requirements for the relationship. The boundaries are also internal boundaries where you stop thinking so much about your partner, where you stop blaming yourself and criticizing yourself and judging yourself for it's all your fault and you should have been different, where you give your power constantly away by wondering how is he doing, what is he feeling, or maybe even anger and frustration that you may feel like is a sense of empowerment when you're irritated or angry at your partner that may make you feel better. But at the end, if it's a quiet, stuffed in anger that's just internally burning and will never get expressed, it only burns you and it only takes away your power and your energy. Now, these internal boundaries basically say also, I cannot change someone who doesn't want to change. I cannot fix someone for the wounds, the dysfunction, the patterns that this person may already have since a long, long time. It's not my job to be his therapist. It's not my job to make him grow up and become an adult. It's not my job to play the parent that he may have never had. I need to have a boundary with that as well. And I need to demand for myself that I either going to have an equal partner or rather not be with that person. And there is a saying that says, if you are taking away someone's pain, you're also taking away their ability to heal themselves. And with that, their ability to learn and grow from the pain. And with that, their ability to be whole and ultimately be happy. Because there is a certain kind of pain that your abuser may have, a certain kind of limitation or limiting belief they are struggling with that they have to address. The inner shadows are their responsibility and not yours. And as hard as you may have been trying to bring light into those shadows, you have seen that your light only got devoured and swallowed up, and you felt more and more that darkness overshadowing you. And finally, I believe the most important part is that you are noticing how you treat yourself. Because chances are, and maybe even before that relationship, that you already have been abusing yourself, that you were the one who were down on yourself. You were the one who were saying to yourself all those things that your partner was telling you, that you're not smart enough, that you're not pretty enough, that you're getting too old, that you're too sensitive. Notice your self-talk. And notice that maybe now you have even more reason to stop it because you know how painful it is when someone else says those things to you. Treat yourself how you want to be treated. Love yourself how you want to be loved. And that may mean that you have to Get out of those relationships you're in, those abusive relationships, and really learn first to have a relationship with yourself. I know it sounds trite. You have to learn to love yourself more first before you go and find love with someone else. But there is some truth in that triteness. Because I believe when we have a strong foundation of confidence, appreciation, and self love, the likelihood to get abused is much, much less. Because we are spotting it, we are immediately saying no to it, and we are moving on because we know we deserve something much better than that. Well, another hour of Empowerment Radio. I hope there was some fruit for thought for you. And if you have any questions, reach out to info@thefearandanxietysolution.com or go to the website, thefearandanxietysolution.com. See what I can do for you to help you to find that confidence, that sense of self-love, and that appreciation. Until next time, take good care of yourself. And as I said, treat yourself how you want to be treated. Goodbye.